guys, it's Ty and welcome back to my channel. So today I wanted to go ahead and talk about the books that I have recently read. Well, in this case, the books that I have recently listened to. If you have not seen my recent video on books that I would recommend if you are in a reading slump, I have actually been in a reading slump. I mentioned that in that video. So I have listened to quite a few audiobooks because that was just the best way for me to consume my reading these last couple of weeks. So all of the books that I'm going to talk about, I have actually listened to them on audio, and the majority of these are actually adult mystery thrillers, except for one adult dystopian. So didn't realize that I was going for a theme here. So I will actually start with my lowest rated and work my way up to my highest rated. So we'll go ahead and get started. So the first book that I want to talk about is When No One Is Watching by Alyssa Cole. Again, this is a adult mystery thriller suspense novel. And so this is following our main character by the name of Sydney, who is this young Black woman that is living in Brooklyn, New York, in a predominantly Black neighborhood. And she starts to notice that a lot of her neighbors have been moving out of this neighborhood. And as she's walking around the neighborhood, she starts to notice that there have been a lot of for sale signs in their apartments and their homes and a lot of the shops and stores that she normally goes to. And she starts to realize that something is not quite right. And so she decides that she wants to do like this walking tour for the community where she can kind of present a history of the neighborhood to the community to kind of bring the community together. And she ends up getting assistance from a new neighbor that recently moved into the neighborhood by the name of Theo, who is white. And so as they are working together, they start to realize that something sinister is indeed going on in their neighborhood. And so the story kind of takes off from there. I unfortunately did not think that this story was at all thrilling, nor did I think this was suspenseful. I can appreciate the author really going in and talking about the topic of gentrification and how these Black people were being moved out of this neighborhood and these white people were being moved in. I guess you could say these more wealthier white people were being moved in to kind of, I guess, improve their neighborhood. And so I really liked that aspect of the story. But besides that, there was nothing else that I really liked about this. So this is actually another story that is compared to Get Out. And I said this in one of my recent videos that I put out, that I am so done with like reading books that are compared to Get Out because they're not working for me. Every single time I pick up a book that's compared to Get Out, I don't like it. And this is no exception. I ended up rating this book a 2 stars. And the reason why I just did not like this is because, like I just said, I didn't think it was thrilling. I didn't think this was suspenseful. I think everything that was done in this story was so heavy-handed. And as far as like the comparison to Get Out, I mean, I can see it, but I feel like Get Out did it better. In that movie, everything was done so subtly that it really kind of made you think twice about what was kind of like going on. In this one, I don't think you had to think about what was going on. It was very clear. She made it very clear what was going on in this neighborhood. I think everything was just done with such a heavy hand. Like the conversations that Sydney was having with the people that were being moved into the neighborhood, like you could clearly see what was going on. Like nothing was left to be questioned at all. There was an extra like twist towards the end that kind of was like, oh, okay. But other than that, I mean, it was very clear. And then speaking of the twist at the end, I mean, yeah, that was interesting, and that brought up a whole nother topic as well. And I think the thought of what was going on in her neighborhood, that could be somewhat terrifying. Not somewhat, that is terrifying. I think just the way that it was executed in the story, I think it could have been done differently, maybe. Maybe it could have been done a little bit more subtly, not with such a heavy hand. And I think everything that happened toward the end of this book, it was rushed. It was probably done within like the last 20-25 pages, and maybe that could have been drawn out and explained a little bit more. everything was like done so fast, and then it was just wrapped up so nicely and so quick, and it was just like, wait, what? Really? And so I didn't like that. And then I didn't really care for this like romance between Sydney and Theo. I just wasn't feeling that. I didn't really connect with any of these characters. So I had to end up giving this one 2 stars. So the next book that I want to talk about is The Collective by Allison Galen. And this is a adult mystery book. And this follows our main character by the name of Camille, who is still trying to get over the tragic death of her daughter, Emily. And at the beginning of this story, Emily has been dead for about 5 years. And so Camille actually gets wrapped up in this group called The Collective. And so The Collective is actually this group of other grieving mothers. They have all tragically in some way lost their children. And so in this group, they discuss how their children were murdered. They talk about ways they would like to get revenge on the people that murdered their children. And so in the beginning, Camille kind of thinks that this is just a way for them to cope and that it's kind of like a joke, until one day she realizes it isn't. And the story kind of takes off from there. I ended up giving this one a 3 stars. I thought this was fine. I wish that we didn't really get so much information about the group itself. In the beginning of this book, we get so much information about what the collective is, what they do, how they get things done, who's all in it. It's just so much about the group itself. And then in the last, maybe third of this book, and this book isn't that long, and like the last third of the book is like when the actual mystery part of this like story takes place. And I wish the whole thing was like a mystery. I wish like the whole group itself was like more of a mystery. I feel like nothing in this story, nothing in this book was like left up to your imagination. Everything was just like given to you. So by the time we got to like the mystery part, I almost kind of didn't really care, if that makes sense. I just thought it was fine. I like the idea of the group. I like the topic of grief in this story, and how, you know, we have all of these grieving mothers, and how basically you would do anything to get back at the people who did wrong to you and your family. So, I mean, I like that aspect of it. I just wish we had more of a mystery. It was just kind of this author just telling us basically what was going on until like the last third of the book. And like I said, by that point of it, I don't think I cared. So all in all, I thought this one was fine. So the next one that I want to talk about, which I think is a really popular one out of all the books that I have here, and that is Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. I've had this one on like my list of books to read for a long time, and I finally got to it. So this is a adult post-apocalyptic dystopian novel, and it's basically a multiple timeline story that is following different points before, during, and after this Georgia flu pandemic. At the beginning of the story, it starts off with us at a stage play of King Lear, where the actor that is playing King Lear, I believe, drops dead of a heart attack during the play. Now, that is very significant in this whole story. And everybody from that particular play and that was there from that night has a big part to play in this story, and how all these timelines interconnect and come together. And so, like I said, it's following different parts of the pandemic. And so the main character that we're following is this girl by the name of Kristen. And so that night at the play, she was a little girl that was one of the young actors in the play. and she witnessed the death of this man that was playing King Lear, I believe. And so when she gets older, she is a part of this traveling symphony. And after the pandemic and the world has been devastated, they actually go around to different like towns in this traveling symphony, and they put on performances, whether they put on like little plays or they do musical productions. And so during that time, they actually come in contact with this man who calls himself the Prophet, and he is trying to get this symphony disbanded. And so that this sounds crazy, like when I'm saying it out loud, but it's really interesting because, like I said, all the characters come together. Kristen has like came in contact with so many different characters, and you are getting this pandemic plays like kind of like it's important, but it plays like a backseat to the overall story and how everything just like interconnects. And then at points of the story, like you'll get like 2 years before the flu, and then it'll jump back to where Kristen is present in the story, and then it'll jump like 20 years before the flu, and then you'll get like 2 days after the flu, and you get the timeline is crazy. And then it's like then there's parts in here where you get where Kristen is being interviewed, and it's a lot going on in here. But I really actually enjoyed this. I ended up giving this one a 4 stars. I think the timeline will probably be confusing to people. I thought that the timeline was very confusing in the beginning. I especially thought it was kind of confusing when I was listening to this on audio. So I did have the book very close by anytime that I was listening to it in case I did start to get confused. I think realizing why this book is called Station 11 is interesting. I thought the whole thing was interesting. If you also wanted to know, this has been adapted into a series. I think it's a series that is currently on HBO Max, which I have not watched yet. I plan to, but I haven't watched it yet. I don't know. I don't think I've heard anybody say anything, so I'm not sure if it's actually any good or not. The only thing that stopped me from like giving this like a 5 stars is because I did mention to you that there's this whole thing about the Prophet. But I wish we could have gotten like way more as far as like that whole timeline. But there's a lot of timelines, there's a lot of characters, but everything makes sense. And like I can't even go into what everything and all the pieces mean without like spoiling anything. But I enjoyed this one. Just know that it's about a pandemic before, during, and after, and how this society is trying to rebuild itself. And it's just a lot of moving parts and a lot of characters, and I really enjoyed this one. So the next one that I have here is The Night She Disappeared by Lisa Jewell. And this is another adult mystery novel. And Lisa Jewell is like a popular adult mystery thriller writer, and this is my first one by her, and I'm just gonna say this did not disappoint. I really enjoyed this one. And so this one actually follows our main character by the name of Kim, and one night her daughter Tallulah and Tallulah's boyfriend Zach decide that they're gonna go out one night. They are 2 young teenagers, and they actually have a young son, and they are both, I think they're like 19 years old. And so they decide that they're going to go out. They're going to go out to a bar, and just like 2 normal teenagers, they do just that. They go out, and Kim expects that they're going to be home because they have a young child. So she is going to babysit for them, and when she wakes up the next morning, she realizes that they haven't returned. And so this actually starts off in a dual timeline. So we are following Kim's perspective as she is trying to figure out what exactly happened to Tallulah and Zach and where they are at. And that is in the past, I believe in 2017. And then we are kind of in the future in 2018, where we are following a crime writer by the name of Sophie, who actually moves into the town where Tallulah and Zach have disappeared. And so when she moves into that town, one day she is out on the grounds and she finds a note stuck to a tree that says, dig here. And so she does just that, and she digs up an item that kind of connects to the disappearance of Tallulah and Zach, and the story takes off from there. I really enjoyed this one. I ended up giving this one a 4 stars. One of the things that I really like is I like the dual timeline stories. I like them when the author can keep me interested in both of the timelines. I feel like in some of those stories, it can get kind of tricky because sometimes you'll find yourself liking one timeline over the other. And in this one, I liked both of them. I liked listening to Kim's. I liked reading from her, trying to figure out exactly what happened to Tallulah and Zach. And then I liked reading from Sophie's POV, trying to figure out exactly where her clues are leading her into the disappearance of Tallulah and Zach. We also are getting a perspective from Tallulah herself, because we are getting a look into the relationship between Tallulah and Zach, which was also pretty interesting because that gives a lot of insight into the night that they disappeared. So I really, really enjoyed this story. The only thing that I will say is that some of the motivations for the things that were happening in this story kind of seemed non-existent, or they did not make sense to me, and I wish that they were explained a little better. If this is what I have to expect from Lisa Jewell, I definitely plan on picking up more books from her. So yeah, I really like this one. It read really I listened to this one, but I flew through this one on audio. So if you're thinking of picking this one up, I would definitely suggest the audio. It went really fast. It was really intriguing. It was really engaging, and I really enjoyed this one. And then the last one that I have to talk about, and the favorite of the group that I've talked about, is The Night Swim by Megan Golden. So this follows our main character by the name of Rachel, who is the host of this really popular podcast by the name of Guilty or Not Guilty. And what she would normally do on her podcast is kind of reinvestigate old cases, but she decides that she's going to try something different and do an active case. And so she is going to go to this town where she is going to look into this case where this girl is accusing this really popular swimmer of raping her. And so while she's in this town kind of preparing for this case, she starts to receive these notes from this anonymous person that is wanting her to look into the murder of this girl by the name of Jenny. And so the story kind of takes off from there, and Rachel is trying to focus on this active rape case while also looking into this murder case. And so this one was really good to listen to on audio because it has that podcasty feel. So while we're in the middle of listening to the story, in between different chapters, we would get interludes with a podcast. And so it would have the music going, and she would kind of give you a breakdown of what's actually going on in this active case that she is doing her podcast over. And I really enjoyed that. And so this book also brings up a lot of good topics in regards to women that have been sexually assaulted. It talks a lot about how sexual assault victims feel when they are being put on the stand. It talks a lot about how people who are being accused of sexual assault, the things that they go through versus what the sexual assault victims go through. It also talks about how everyone else involved, the things that they go through. So it kind of, opens up your eyes to all of the different pieces that takes place in these types of cases. It does have some of the mixed media format because Rachel, our main character, has that podcast, so you have some of that in here. She's also receiving those letters from this mysterious person, so you have that in here. And this book is really interesting because you have two mysteries going on with the current case that Rachel is working on, and also with the mystery that she's trying to solve of the other murder that's going on. So I kind of liked trying to piece together two different things, and then we had the twist at the end that I did not see coming. So I actually ended up rating this one a 5 stars. This is also one of these that I've had on my shelf for a little while that I decided to randomly just knock out. And I am so happy that I did, because I really enjoyed everything about this one. If you're going to pick this one up, I again would pick this one up on audio, because I think you would appreciate the podcast feel of this one. I think the twist at the end was really good. And I liked how everything between the two cases that she was trying to solve came together. And I just liked everything about this. I just really enjoyed this one. So I would pick this up if you haven't already. And that is all that I have for you guys. And I will see you guys next time. Bye.